Chase for the Championship is made possible by our partners, including Kroger. Visit Kroger for all your holiday needs and stock up for college bowl season. R.S. Andrews, DawgNation's choice for all your heating needs this season. Visit rsandrews.com to see how they can make you smile today. Marlowe's Tavern. Need a tasty gift this holiday season? Try a Marlowe's Tavern gift card. Visit marlowstavern.com to purchase your gift card today. And Georgia Farm Bureau. With experienced and friendly agents all across the great state of Georgia, Georgia Farm Bureau keeps its promises to members. Learn more at gfbinsurance.com. Here are your hosts for Chase for the Championship, DawgNation's Brandon Adams and John Stinchcomb.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into Chase for the Championship, presented by Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, R.S. Andrews, and Georgia Farm Bureau. I am Brandon Adams. Be joined here in a moment by John Stinchcomb, and one way or another, the chase for the championship is almost done. On Monday night, it comes to a conclusion. Either Georgia gets there and hoists that national championship trophy for the first time in more than 40 years, or obviously it has the potential of being another in a disappointing chapter when it comes to losses to Nick Saban and Alabama. From an emotional standpoint, the stakes could not be higher going into a game like this. And with that, we'll welcome in John Stinchcomb, former Georgia All-American, a guy who lives and dies with this program every single game, much the same way we all do. And John, I know you're going to be in Indianapolis, and I know you're just as excited about the game as we all are. And I think you, because you are Georgian, you played for UGA, you obviously have, cheered for Georgia as a alumnus of the program since then. I mean, if anybody can kind of encapsulate what this win would mean for Georgia if they're fortunate enough to get it on Saturday, I think you can probably speak to that as well as anybody. So what would a title mean for DawgNation after all of these years of waiting for it?
Well, I think it legitimizes our program. I mean, we claim to be a national product, right? But yet you look across the board and there's so many other teams that have been able to hoist this national championship trophy. In Georgia, it's been elusive. And we haven't been able to finally cash in and cash out at the end of the season like all the other national brands have. And this is our year. It's supposed to be from start to finish. This has looked like the best team in college football. And there's one last game for us to kind of put that stamp on the legitimacy of this program. I think Coach Smart, when he first came, the expectation was to win championships and not just SEC championships. So it's the culmination and the coming to fruition of all the plans and hopes and desires of the program that has eluded us for 40 years.
And for me, really, this is the intersection of kind of short-term history and long-term history. Obviously, in the case of the long-term history, 40 years is a long time to wait, especially for a program that's as well-resourced as Georgia is. I won't deny that. You've seen border states collect national titles, rival programs collect national titles. The fact that Georgia has waited as long as it has is a little bit unusual, and it's certainly been frustrating for Georgia fans who've been forced to endure that. However, on the short-term part of this, it's also the arch nemesis Alabama and the success that Nick Saban has enjoyed, that the Crimson Tide has enjoyed while Saban's been their head coach. And listen, John, you're in the world of business. You understand this. Taking down the market leader in any field is not an easy thing to do. So while the long wait, 40 years to win a national title, certainly feels arduous, the notion that, hey, it's taken Kirby Smart more than 4 or 5 years to topple Nick Saban and that dynasty to Alabama, that's the one part about this I kind of push back on. Maybe you do kind of there as well, which is that, I get the long wait, 40 years, being impatient there, but in terms of how come you didn't beat Nick Saban from the very word go as head coach, that's the part of this where sometimes I think people probably overstate how long it's taken Kirby individually. He's been here for a short time. He's very quickly got Georgia on the forefront of the national championship talk. That's actually a good thing, not a bad thing in my mind.
I think it's great. And I like and appreciate the way that the organization, this entire athletic department has built this program. When Coach Smart came, it wasn't a chase for the cup for one season. It's a sustainability. It's each season Georgia is in that discussion. There's other teams that have flashed. For one season they look competitive. For one season they might have caught lightning in a bottle. But the way Coach Smart and his staff have approached it is we plan on being in the discussion, in the hunt on an annual basis, a la Alabama. Alabama has kind of been the cupbearer and standard by which other teams have measured themselves. And we've seen in the past other teams have that one shot, that 1 year Well, Georgia's now at that point in their program where, because of recruiting, because of development, because of the identity and culture that's been created in Athens, this is an annual occurrence, and it's become commonplace. Now, with that said, you still have to clear that final hurdle, and it's a high one because Alabama has continued to put themselves in the same position of in that last game and fighting for a national championship. And it's where we need to be. It's where we want to be. And you just have to punch your final ticket on Monday night.
I think you bring up a lot of good points that for Georgia, this is about more than just collecting a trophy and basically kind of calling game after that, because frankly, LSU won one a couple of years ago. And listen, LSU's been a great program. They've won, multiple national championships with multiple coaches, but there's a way in which a national title doesn't always prove to be sustainable. LSU's completely off the national radar right now, just less than 2 years removed from having had one of the greatest teams of all time. And maybe a more prominent example, that's a school like Auburn, which won a national championship in 2010. But the whole thing just seems sort of even short-term at the time. A guy like Cam Newton swoops in, helps you win. He's gone, completely shrouded in controversy the entire time that he was there. And in the intervening years, Georgia's beaten Auburn most of those years since 2010 that you can't discount a national championship, but there's obviously more to college football than just being really good in 1 year. And that's not to soften the blow for Georgia having not won one of these titles, but there is something to be said for being the kind of national champion, if you can ever get to that point where Alabama is, where it does last for a while. And, short-term success has a way of also feeling pretty fleeting when it's all said and done. And that's, I agree with you, the kind of thing that's been pretty special about the way that Kirby's built all this up is it's been built not to kind of take advantage of a moment, but to kind of leave a legacy that could last for a long time.
A legacy. I think that's what we're looking at. Now, with that said, you have to clear that hurdle of winning a national championship before the rest of this discussion is pertinent, right? So for Georgia, they have to win the national championship before you start saying we want to be one of those programs that stays at the top and doesn't just win one. Right. Well, first we have to win one.
That's right.
Before we can say we're in that discussion on an annual basis, which we have been. We just haven't been able to finish the drill, if you will, and come away with a national championship. And obviously this 2021 season has been one where you think, man, this is a prime opportunity for Georgia to finally seize the moment and crown a new champion and a new top dog, not only in the SEC, but across the country.
Speaking of that concept of a legacy, you hear John talk about that there. Georgia linebacker Nolan Smith also talked about that this week, and I don't know that anyone has done as good a job of kind of setting the stakes for this game as well as Nolan Smith did. The entire interview, which you can watch online at the DawgNation YouTube page, is worth your attention, but one clip in particular about as a Georgian, someone who grew up in Georgia, although Nolan did play some of his high school career at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, but as a Georgian, and Nolan certainly views himself that way and is a true Georgian, what it would mean to bring a national championship back to his home state. This is good for Nolan, also in that concept of what a legacy he'd leave behind as a national champion at Georgia. Here's Nolan Smith.
I mean, I think it means everything, There's a lot of kids that's born and raised in the state of Georgia, and this is one that you'll never forget. And I always talk about leaving a legacy to my kids, but this is the ultimate, kind of like, a lot of people go to the programs just because of their father and everything. I want that to be my son's choice, but ultimately this is my goal and my dream, to be able to walk back here and, point at, son, this is what I did here. And, we're born and raised here, so why wouldn't we want to do that?
John, I don't know that kind of perspective on history is common for anyone, older person, younger person. It may be even less common for someone as young as Nolan is. But to have the intuition that Georgia football was here before I got here, it's going to be here after I'm gone, and as of now, I'm a part of this program. As of now, I'm a part of someone who's actively writing this history as this season progresses. I think that's a pretty cool perspective from Nolan. I think you're absolutely right about that the names of this 2021 team have a chance to be truly etched in history forever based on what happens on Monday night. And I don't know that I certainly believe, don't believe that fully embracing that makes you less likely to win or anything like that. I think it's probably good that no one thinks of it that way of, while we have to go out and approach this as if it's any other game, the end result of a victory is not like any other game. It's unlike any game we've ever played before. And the fact that Nolan's got such an appreciation for what this would mean based on the previous history of Georgia football and his own future when he looks back on his history one day, many, many years from now, I think that's a pretty cool perspective from Nolan right there.
Yeah, and hopefully it's something, a perspective that's being poured into this entire team, because it's correct in that this team will walk together forever. We will forever memorize and know the names that were on this team once they win the national championship. You'll think back and be able to almost recite the different players that were a part of this, and they will be, forever stamped on Georgia's culture. If you look back to not only Herschel Walker, but how many of those guys, that national championship team, can you name like it's rattling off a list? And that's 40 years removed. Now, hopefully it's not 40 years for Georgia between them again.
Right.
But this would be the team that clears that last hurdle that's been so elusive. And leaving that legacy, I can attest. We won a Super Bowl in New Orleans. It was the first in that organization's history. And you become interwoven into the fabric of that organization. And that will be no different for these young men and the coaching staff and this team. You win a national championship, and you put your timestamp on a program. And for each man to understand that you're talking about leaving a legacy and creating a legacy that will be long lasting, much longer than your opportunities will be to actually play this game. And most of these guys will go on and play professional football, but the memories, the connection that they're creating, the legacy that they'll leave on this team, on this university, and the fan base will far extend past their whatever football careers they'll have.
I think it's safe to say the relationship the city of New Orleans has had with the Saints is similar to the way an SEC team would be embraced by its own fan base there as well. So in that state of Louisiana, I know you go back there frequently still. You're still connected to that organization, that community. What was it like to be a Saint after you were on a team that won a Super Bowl for the first time? What was that like for you personally, and how embraced did you feel after all of that?
Well, you feel like your family. And that was, we won 10 years ago, and I go back and I get recognized, if you will, more in New Orleans than anywhere in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's because of that year, because of the Super Bowl. You'll be in a restaurant, you're pumping gas, and fans will come up and continue to talk about, what a special year that was. And I would expect the exact same for the guys on this team, that, if 10 years removed, you run into Stetson Bennett at the Publix,
sure, and
guys are going to come up and tell stories of that one game or that national championship game where, he threw that touchdown pass to Jermaine Burton in the corner of the end zone against Alabama. It's those type memories that fans will glom onto and cling to for years to come. And it's a special opportunity. It's a special relationship that lasts forever between the fan base and one team. So really, to have that perspective as Nolan's describing, I certainly didn't have it at the time, and you can appreciate having been through it and being on the other side. But in the moment, that's tough to do. So, my guess is somebody has come and spoken to, at least to him, but hopefully to the entire team, and let them know the opportunity that's at hand.
Let me just say one more thing on this before we move on. Obviously, you can speak to this so well from the perspective of a former player, and I kind of come at this as a lifelong fan here. And here's the one thing I can tell you, John, is that my life has been made richer by being a Georgia fan this entire time, despite the fact that Georgia's never celebrated a national championship, at least since I've been old enough to remember what was going on. I was alive in 1980, but I don't really have any memories of that. But nonetheless, while at the championship level, most of my experiences as a Georgia fan have been pretty disappointing, still the connection I made with other fans and the fact that I get a chance to talk about this every single day, no doubt I'm better for my, fandom as a UGA fan. And there is an extent to which I believe that that'd still be true, even if somehow it doesn't work out on Monday, and even if Georgia goes another number of years without winning a national championship, I'm still better for having been a fan because it just gives a little bit of order to my life. I connect with people I otherwise wouldn't get a chance to connect with. I create memories that I otherwise wouldn't have. So, I don't know that I need a championship to truly kind of fulfill my, sort of fan resume here. But I tell you this, though, when you have been through it as long as someone like I have, and I'm, in my early 40s now, I've lived through a lot of these. And, a lot of those losses, especially to Alabama in recent years, have been real heartbreakers, real disappointments. There is something about the win, if it does come, feeling even more special because of how long you've had to wait for it to occur. And I got no regrets about anything in my life prior to this. But when you've been around this as long as you have, and you've waited as long as you have, Cubs fans can speak to this, Saints fans can speak to this, Red Sox fans, I think, can speak to this. There are a number of fan bases who kind of know what it's like to kind of overcome a long wait. Cleveland Cavaliers fans years ago, I guess, in kind of that same category. That Georgia fans may very, very soon get a chance to find out, how good it feels to put a punctuation mark on what has been quite an extraordinary level of patience now over the course of a number of decades.
Well, it's an appreciation, right? As fans, we've endured every one of these years. For an incoming freshman who, might be from out of state and sees Georgia as an opportunity to, launch a professional career, they probably haven't had to endure some of the seasons that have let us down in the end, right? But I think it makes these moments that much sweeter when you finally cash in. It's like, a 10-year veteran on a team who finally gets the opportunity to play in that championship game and you come away with a win. That's a heck of a lot sweeter than a guy who just walked in the door, probably hasn't played very much, and he's on the team and the team wins a championship. And it's like, hey, this is cool. This is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't have the same perspective and appreciation for the toil and work and, quite honestly, some of the pains and struggles that it takes and demand for you to go through before you can experience the true sweetness of the moment. And that's no different from the Georgia fan base. I love the game of football. I would play the game no matter whether I was guaranteed a championship or not. It's fun.
Yeah.
Same thing for fans. We like to be a part of the DawgNation and have that camaraderie and that commonality between us because we love Georgia football. With that said, it's a heck of a lot sweeter when you win in the end, and that's the opportunity that we have. And you want to cash in, and you want to look back and say, man, all the heartache and heartbreak is behind us now, and the taste of that sweet apple at the end of this thing is sweeter than I could ever imagine.
It's Chase for the championship. That's John Stinchcomb, former UGA All-American. I'm Brandon Adams. Happy to have you with us. Big thanks to our great sponsors making all this possible. Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, R.S. Andrews, Georgia Farm Bureau, as we are heading towards Monday night in Indianapolis, Georgia versus Alabama for the national championship and the final destination on the chase for the championship for UGA here this year. And John, as we get ready for Monday, we're seeing a little bit of a different narrative out there from media this time than maybe the last time these two teams played, where it was certainly very common to hear folks with prominent voices picking Georgia to win the game. I think UGA faces a lot more doubters this time around. There are multiple examples I could give you. Let me give you one, though, in particular. This is Greg McElroy, ESPN analyst, former Alabama quarterback, also radio host, WJOX in Birmingham. And, McElroy was on the radio this week. It was during an interview with Paul Feinbaum, and he kind of laid it out pretty clearly, his belief that until he sees Georgia get it done on a stage like this against this opponent, he is simply going to assume it's just not going to happen. This is Greg McElroy from earlier this week.
I cannot pick Georgia in this game. I'll make my pick now. I mean, I'm picking Alabama. I don't know how you can pick Georgia. I understand why people might be able to see through that. But, man, I've also witnessed Bama beat Georgia convincingly a few times. I just can't go that far. I understand it. I get it. But I can't make that decision.
Booker McFarland, another ESPN analyst on the Tony Kornheiser podcast this week, that not only does he not think that Stetson Bennett can lead Georgia to a national championship, McFarland said he doesn't believe that Nick Saban thinks Stetson Bennett can lead Georgia to national championships. Whether it's McFarland or McElroy or guys like that, John, it certainly seems like Georgia's got more than its fair share of doubters this time around. I think the whole rat poison thing and, rat poison on the other side, which Nick Saban talked about after the SEC title game, I think a lot of that is a little bit overplayed, that ultimately – Georgia may have felt like it had a chip on its shoulder going into the game against Michigan. They were clearly motivated by a lot there, but I almost think that was more motivated about playing better than they had played the previous time than it was shutting up anybody who assumed that Michigan was going to win in that spot there. And I don't know that it's unforgivable for a guy like McElroy to say, I assume that what's happened before is going to happen again until I see otherwise. In other words, there's a little extra scrutiny for Georgia going into a game like this. And even though I'm a UGA fan and ultimately I hope McElroy's wrong, and I believe he probably will be, I don't think it's unfair to judge UGA a little more closely just simply on the basis of what happened the last time these two teams played and now the last few times these two teams have played.
Well, we have a different set of information than what we had at the start of the month. At the start of December, Georgia looked very dominant with Alabama's coming off what almost should have been a loss to Auburn. And that's what we're basing that analysis heading into that game. There's a different set of data to use and analyze, whether it's Booger McFarland, and candidly, I don't know. I don't put a whole lot of weight of McElroy's vote into this analysis, given that he's a homer. He played for Alabama. Well,
sure.
All right, guy. But, I'm sure he's giving a very unbiased opinion. I'll tell you, my opinion is biased. I think Georgia's got it, and I have no qualms in letting you know that. But I think it's based on a couple things. You look at the criticism for Stetson Bennett. He's had one game where he's thrown over 30 pass attempts in a game. That was against Alabama. That's not Georgia's recipe.
Right.
If that's what you're thinking, if you think Georgia needs to go in and we need to throw the ball around all game long, that's not been the identity of this team. That's not playing to our strengths. So if that's the point that Booger McFarland's trying to make, fine. That hasn't been the recipe for success. I think more importantly, it happens on the other side of the ball. How can you affect Bryce Young, which we didn't do consistently or really, quite honestly, very effectively in the SEC championship game? And how do we minimize those breakdowns on the back end where, all season long, with the exception of one game, our defense has been locked in. And to think that this defense would allow 41 points in a game, which, I realize 7 of those came on a pick six, but still it was not characteristic of this team. I think that's the identity that Georgia has established throughout the season. We got away from it against Alabama. And if you're asking what's it going to take to win in this game, it's to be true to who you are. You have to be that suffocating defense that executes and pressures a quarterback, and given the opportunities, you take advantage of them and limit the big plays and the mistakes that plagued us in the SEC championship game. If you think you're coming in and it's a Stetson show where we're going to throw the ball around, well, yeah, Booger, I agree, man. Stetson's not that guy. But we also saw in Michigan where he made a lot of great decisions when he's throwing it, and then got out of what would otherwise be clear sacks when Hutchinson and a 3 technique come clean, and all of a sudden it's instead of a 7-yard loss, we've got a first down and a new set of plays to choose from. So, you listen to Coach Monken, you listen to Coach Smart, they talk about Stetson and what he brings to the game. You watch his performance following what was not his best game against Alabama, and he answered the call. He came in against Michigan prepared, and even on his incompletions, most of those, he put the ball in a situation where his player could make a play. So I think that is championship level football. I think responding after a game that was not your best and going out and performing in a way that leads your team to win is success, and what Georgia has seen and believes in when they put Stetson under center.
Said a moment ago, I've kind of grown a little tiresome of the whole rat poison talk. I'm almost ready to just kind of put a moratorium on it. I feel like there are other forms of motivation that nobody believes in us, but it seems like the college football media kind of gravitates towards that almost exclusively, especially in situations where Nick Saban's involved, because he obviously made that phrase famous. But you would be hard-pressed to have found any kind of bulletin board material against Georgia before the SEC title game, and you do at least have some now. Do you think that's a more comfortable spot for Georgia to find itself in? You know, they're still the point spread favorite, although they're less of a favorite this time than they were the last time. But you do have, you know, prominent voices with a following, you know, saying, I don't think Georgia's going to do it, or, you know, speaking out against Stetson Bennett, or speaking out against anything. Hey, it's one thing to beat Michigan, it's another thing to beat Alabama. As a football team and a guy that's been a part of football teams, do you think this is a more comfortable spot for Georgia to be in than maybe the position of the clear front-running favorite the last time around?
Well, I think the difference is you've got film that shows you didn't play your best against this team. I think you look at NFL, and the NFL is a great resource for us to see how this plays out when two really good teams play each other more than once a year. I mean, each division in the NFL, you have to face the other three teams in your division twice a year, and not often is it a 2-0 or 0-2 record. Many of the times it's split 1-1, especially against the good teams. And the flow of a game matters. How it plays out, it matters. And do I think that listening to the media right now is an extra motivator for this Georgia team? No. I think they have plenty of motivation every time you turn on the film and analyze, which I'm sure they're doing in preparation for Alabama, that first game that they played at the beginning of December, when in the SEC championship, there was a number of opportunities where, you know, you're one block away from breaking a run, or you're one arm tackle away from preventing a drive from continuing, or you come out of your break. All those things, those are motivating factors, but you don't need extra in a national championship game. You're going to give your best, you're preparing your best, and you know that there's no reason not to put everything on the line. That was like a triple negative there, BA.
No worries.
But you get it. I mean,
I think if you go triple negative, you actually bring it back to where you wanted it to be. I believe the triple negative actually cancels out the double negative, so now you're back on solid ground again, I believe. I'm not a grammatical expert, but I believe that's true.
Oh, good. Thank you for that, BA.
Sure thing.
Having my back on that one. But yeah, I mean, you don't need extra motivation. It's the national championship.
That's right.
Not to mention, it's against a team the only team that's come close to you and beat you in a fashion that I'm sure for most folks that have pride and take pride in their work, you take a little umbrage to. So plenty of motivation to come into this game with everything you got.
It is Chase for the Championship. That's John Stinchcomb, brought to you today by Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, R.S. Andrews, Georgia Farm Bureau. Happy to have all of them. They've been with us throughout the entire time, and hopefully you have been there as well. It culminates on Monday in Indianapolis against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And another topic I want to address here, John, while we have some time, and this goes back to an interview I conducted in December just before the SEC championship game with Tim Tebow, the former Florida Gator, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Had a chance to ask Tebow about Stetson Bennett. This was at the time going into the SEC championship game. But what Tebow said about Bennett at the time, I think still is relevant going into this title game there as well. For both the part of this quote, which I believe is probably accurate, and the part of this quote, which I believe represents a fairly common misunderstanding of the true story involving Stetson Bennett here. So let me let you hear both aspects of this. Me asking Tebow what Georgia needs from Bennett. This was going into the game in December, but I believe it's, from Tebow's perspective, probably equally true going into this game here in January right now. So this is me with Tim Tebow from a couple of weeks ago.
As a quarterback, what would you like to see from Stetson Bennett on Saturday?
That it might not just be a time where I can be a game manager. I might need to be a game winner. And there's a difference. And he's done everything he's needed to do. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. But in this game, if Alabama, Bryce Young, Jamison Williams can make a few plays, can he answer it? Because I think he's got that in him. But this would be that stage where all of a sudden you're called on to not just, hey, manage this, get it to the right guy, make a play with your leg, but to go win it. I think he has it in him. And if it comes down to that, I would be excited to see what happens.
So I think when you hear Tebow there, John, I think it represents, first of all, a fairly common error that people make regarding Bennett. In fact, as we're recording this on a Thursday, there's been kind of an online conversation today where I guess an ACC network analyst had talked about, or ACC network reporter, something like that, had talked about, hey, can Bennett be more than a game manager, or essentially assuming that Bennett's just a game manager. We put just in front of that because typically speaking, that's kind of a backhanded compliment or a little bit of a pejorative phrase when you describe a quarterback that way. But John, I think one of the things that you would probably agree with me on is Stetson Bennett is a lot of things, and a lot of those things are really pretty good. But the one thing he's never quite been is a game manager. And I mean this honestly, that Bennett has a little bit of a penchant for putting the football in harm's way a little more than you would want a game manager to do for you. I mean, Bennett sort of sees himself as Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray or one of these, undersized quarterbacks that's just kind of, swashbuckling his way around the football field. That's the way that Bennett sees himself, and only being a game manager who protects the football at all costs and never makes a kind of a risky play. That's simply not who Bennett sees himself as, for the good and the bad. There are times in which Bennett's a little too dangerous with the football, just to be completely honest with you. But I think that Tebow in that quote there misunderstands that. Other reporters, analysts, I think misunderstand that there as well, is that the one thing that Bennett doesn't see him as, and I think in one respect, Georgia doesn't really use him as that true old school kind of game manager description as a quarterback. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think the game manager moniker really fits Stetson's game. You've seen those programs. Think about the Carolina Panthers back in the day, where their defense was dominant, and really they're just trying to prevent turnovers, play the field position battle. It was going to be some slobber knocker, 10-3, and all of a sudden at the end of the season, you look and they're one of the best winning teams in football. That's not the case for this Georgia team. Look at the Michigan film. Look how many plays Stetson makes, or puts his receivers in a position to make that are aggressive throws. I mean, the fact that Jermaine Burton's streaking touchdown down the sideline, even with that defensive back, if he didn't get turned around and kind of confused as to where Burton was, that's still an aggressive throw. Stetson makes those kind of throws. He's not afraid to give his wide receivers a chance on the ball. I think another one of the things that really lends itself to Stetson's game is he's had to prove himself every step of the way. Nothing was handed to Stetson. I mean, he was the last guy on the list 2 years ago, and this year wasn't the main priority. But yet, because he has to play within the system when everything is supported around him, I think that has progressed his game. And then you see when the play breaks down, when pressure's in his face, when there's an unblocked defensive end and he's having to create, that's when Stetson, I think, separates himself from some of the other quarterbacks, at least from JT Daniels and what we've heard from Coach Smart and Coach Monken as to what they love about Stetson is when he plays within the system, when the system is working, and when the system breaks down, he can still make it a positive for Georgia. And more often than not, that's the case. We've also seen, as you say, that gunslinger mentality at times, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, where it bites you. And, you look at some of his interceptions, if you were to go back through this season and see some of the decisions, even ones that didn't come away as interceptions, but certainly end up being questionable decision-making, I think it's him under pressure trying to create more than what the play has given him. And at times that's it's his biggest strength, and at times it's his biggest weakness.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And to kind of tie it back to what Tebow was talking about a moment ago, the one aspect that I think that Tebow is correct on is that he is going to have to make some big plays on Monday. And that could be a very good thing because, as you said, against the Michigan Wolverines this past Friday, he made no shortage of big plays. Touchdown throws, big throws, everything you kind of want from a guy. Bennett clearly gave you that against Michigan. But for Georgia to win on Monday, he's going to have more of the same on that. I don't think Georgia can win this game 17-14. Now, conversely, I don't believe they can win it 45-42 either. I think it's 35-28. I think it's 31-27. I think it's 31-28. I think it's Georgia in the 30s, Alabama in the 20s. You can't let Alabama exceed 30, but you're going to have to probably get to that number yourself, which means at some point in time, Bennett's going to have to do more of against Alabama what he did against Michigan. I don't think it's unfair to lay it out in those terms for Bennett going into the game here on Monday night.
Yeah, I don't think the ask is going to be the same. I hope it's not, because if the ask is the same as what you're expecting or needing from him as the SEC championship, that means we're not executing and playing well really across the board, but specifically on the defense. This team, this 2021 Georgia team, their strength, their identity is in having one of the best defenses to ever play college football. That was the discussion before the Alabama game, with the exception of the Alabama game, and then you're including that Michigan game. That's still part of the equation. And if you're asking Stetson to throw the ball almost 50 times like you did in the championship game, I don't think that's a recipe for success. Not because of Stetson, but because of what it indicates is happening in the rest of the game. I think really what you've got to limit and eliminate is the fact that the guys that you've relied on throughout the rest of your season, which is primarily the defense, they didn't have their best game. So this conversation about Stetson and how he performed in the SEC championship, I think is more of an indication of the lack of support, if you will, that came from the rest of this team. The fact that you start with the lead, you give it back up in the first half of the SEC championship, then you tie the game up with just less than 2 minutes to go before half, and Alabama takes it back down and comes back into the half with a 7-point lead. So is that on Stetson Bennett? No. Now, how he responds to that, the pick six in the third quarter that was so costly, yeah, I get those things. But really, I think it's more of, can Georgia as a team, specifically the defense, play the style of football that we've grown used to and expect from them that didn't happen in the SEC championship game? Is who's showing up in the natty?
No, I think that's exactly right. John, great stuff. Thank you for being here, part of our chase for the championship throughout this entire run towards this national title game. And on Monday, I know you and I both hope Georgia's holding up that national championship trophy when it's all said and done. Also, a big thanks to our sponsors, Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, R.S. Andrews, Georgia Farm Bureau. Big supporters of us here at DawgNation and big supporters of the Dogs as they make that move towards that title there as well. John, enjoy your time in Indianapolis. We'll look forward to getting a chance to speak to you soon, and certainly appreciate all of your insight as we figure out how the Dogs can get it done in the Hoosier State coming up on Monday night.
BA, next time we're on this show together, hopefully we're talking about the national championship.
I like it.
Georgia Bulldogs.
I like it. Good stuff, John, and to all of you there as well. Happy New Year. Thanks for being a part of that with us here at DawgNation. I know you're getting settled in to enjoy the game, and thanks for allowing us to be a part of that experience with you